I'd like to introduce you to the USDA SBIR STTR program. We are housed in the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, and in the Division of Bioenergy, Climate and Environment. And we have just this year added the Small Business Technology Transfer Program, and so we're very excited about that. We currently have a phase 1 that will close October 25th. So these goals are apply to all SBIR and STTR programs. So there are 4 major goals: to stimulate the technological innovations that exist in the private sector, and to, at the same time, strengthen the role of small businesses. We also want to increase the commercialization of innovations. That's very important, and foster and encourage participation by historically underserved populations, which is also extremely important. The USDA has a non-discrimination statement that we take very seriously. I won't read the whole thing, but I will summarize by just saying that in accordance with the federal civil rights law and the U.S. Department of Agriculture civil rights regulations and policy, the USDA, its agencies, offices, and employees and institutions participating in or administering USDA programs are prohibited from discriminating based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, gender, identity, sexual orientation, disability, age, marital status, family or parental status, income derived from public assistance, political beliefs, or reprisal or retaliation for prior civil rights activity in any program or activity conducted or funded by USDA. Remedies and complaint filing deadlines vary by program or incident. So SBIR programs, SBIR and STTR programs have 3 phases. There's phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And for phase 1, that is there to establish the feasibility of your project. So you'll have a proof of concept research project that will help establish the technical merit and at the same time the commercial potential of your, begin to, illuminate the commercial potential of your project. In phase 2, it's all based on the phase 1, your results from phase 1, and you'll begin to expand the research and development from your project from phase 1. And also, this is the time when you'll start to really ramp up the commercialization piece of it. And then in phase 3, that is not funded by, usually funded by the federal government. You find alternate sources of funding, but that's when you really begin to move into the market with your project. For USDA SBIR STTR, we have an annual budget around $34 million. And most of that, about around 30 million, is for SBIR, and the rest is for STTR. So STTR is a much smaller program. So phase 1, we have 10 topic areas, and we'll go over that in a few minutes. But the award amounts for the topic areas range from 125,000 to 175,000. And for SBIR, the project length is 8 months, and for STTR, it's 12 months. I just want to add here that since this is agriculture and lots of things are crop-based, it's very easy to get an extension if you need one of up to 12 months. For phase 2, all 10 topic areas are funded at $600,000, and those projects last for 24 months. So this table kind of eliminates the differences between SBIR and STTR, and we wanted to try to make it as clear as possible since this is our first year with STTR. So having a nonprofit research institution or federally funded R&D center as a participant in your project is something you're encouraged to do, and you may do, but you don't have to do for SBIR. However, it is a requirement for STTR. And then the percentage of the participation from a nonprofit research institution or federally funded research and development center is different for SBIR and STTR. For SBIR, it is 33% or less for and greater than 50% for phase 2, and then for STTR is 30 to 60% for both phase 1 and phase 2. And then the primary employment of the principal investigator, the PI, is different for these. So for SBIR, the PI must be employed with a small business. For STTR, he may be employed, he or she may be employed with either the small business or the nonprofit research institution. Formal cooperative agreement required, outline intellectual property rights. That is not required for SBIR. It is required for STTR. So just to give you some idea of our funding rates, for phase 1, for FY21, we had 79 out of 526 award, or a 15% award rate. And the same thing was true for FY22 at 15%. So we're pretty solidly in there. I believe the year before in FY20, it was 16%. So we really stay around that rate. For phase 2, it is phase 2 also I want to mention here, and I will repeat it later just so you know, there's no, in USDA SBIR, there is no direct to phase 2. Everything has to come through a phase 1 application award that has been successfully completed. So you can't just apply directly to phase 2. But our award rates, as you can see, are much better for phase 2 than they are for phase 1. They range from 45 to 50%, and these last 2 years have been closer to 50%. So a little bit about success metrics. So for SBIR, STTR, some of the metrics we look at include what are the sales of your technology or services. That's probably of utmost importance. Also licenses of your technology, and new jobs created. How many jobs were created by your project? Some of the features of the USDA SBIR STTR program include that the ideas have to be investigator initiated, and awards are based on the scientific and technical merit of your project and also the commercial potential. Those two things are weighed pretty evenly. And going back to those phases, in phase 1, you're a little more focused on the scientific and technical merit. And then in phase 2, you're still focused on that, but the commercial potential comes up to be more even with that. And then in phase 3, it's the commercial potential that is really, you're really focusing on. We also look at the PI and company qualifications. We encourage subcontracting to universities and federal labs for SBIR, and as required for STTR. University and federal lab involvement is required for STTR. And then we offer technical and business assistance, or TABA. So what is technical and business assistance? TABA, or TABA, however you would like to pronounce it. It was initially introduced as part of the John S. McCain National Defense Authorization Act in fiscal year 2019. And the second bullet shows some of the things that TABA can help with. This is not a comprehensive list. This is just some common things that it helps with, but it can vary. But it is, the purpose of TABA is to help boost the business side of your project to make it successful. So this is the TABA budget for phase 1 and phase 2. And I want to emphasize here that the budget for TABA does not come out of your budget. So if you'll recall those budget amounts from previous slides, for phase 1, it's 125,000 to 175,000. Phase 2 is 600,000. This is not part of those budgets. This is what USDA pays for on top of those budgets. So it is no cost to you. It is a free service to you. And for phase 1, that's 6,500, and that 6,500 is going to be used primarily to develop a comprehensive commercialization plan for your application for phase 2. Because recall that in phase 2, you're really going to be ramping up that commercialization piece, as well as continuing some research and development. Phase 2, it's your budget for TABA is $50,000, and that's to really start to move more aggressively into the commercialization space. These are our 10 topic areas, and our topic areas at USDA are very broad, and they're broad for a reason. They're broad because we want to cast a wide net in order to capture innovations. The nature of innovations is that we can't anticipate what they are. So we leave these topic areas broad. But as you can see, we have quite a few of them, and everything from forests and related resources to, we have 2, plant production and protection. One is focused on biology, and then 8.13 is focused on engineering. Of course, we have animal production and protection. We have conservation of natural resources, air, soil, and water. Food science and nutrition is a fairly large topic area. We get a lot of applications there. We have aquaculture, and we have biofuels and bio-based products. And then you'll notice in the lighter blue, 8.6 and 8.12, rural and community development and small mid-sized farms. And these are a little different than the other 8 topic areas in that for these 2 topic areas, you can use off-the-shelf technology if you apply it in an innovative way. For the other 8 topic areas, it has to be a new technical or scientific innovation. But for these 2, you can use existing technology as long as you have a novel way to apply it. And this slide we like to have just to remind everyone that agriculture is very much a scientific field. And if you have an innovation, a scientific or technical innovation, it might be worth taking a little time to think about whether or not it has an agricultural application. So we deal with all of these and many more. This is just an example of the types of science that we're involved with, but there are very few types of science that we are not, agriculture is not involved with. So this is just a reminder that we are very much a science-based field. These are our typical program timelines. We don't guarantee these timelines every year. It depends on many factors, but this is generally what we aim for. So we have a solicitation released in July for phase 1, and the proposal deadline is usually in October. Then we do reviews and award notifications from December through February, and the start date for phase 1 is July 1st of the following year from when you apply. For phase 2, again, the phase 2 is only open to phase 1 awardees. And so we release that solicitation usually in December, and the proposal deadline is in March, and then notifications April through June, and the start date for phase 2 is always in September. Now I'm going to talk just a little bit about the review process. The review process does vary a lot from SBIR program to SBIR program, and so we have a peer review process where all proposals are evaluated by a confidential peer review panel. And these are experts from academia, from federal labs, from industry, and from nonprofits. But they're the experts in the fields from across these areas. And all applicants will receive verbatim reviews from copies of the reviews from the panel. If you'll recall that we have a 15% success rate for phase one, so it's very common for phase one applicants not to be awarded the first time around. So you get these copies of the reviews from the panel, and you can use that. That feedback is meant to make your proposal more competitive. So we really encourage you to use that feedback and make adjustments to your proposal based on that feedback, so you can have a more cutting edge proposal the next time you apply. So we really encourage that. And the other thing about phase two that's very important is that you can only apply for phase two one time. So you want to make it your best application. University and government involvement. This slide is for SBIR only, and then we'll talk about STTR. But for SBIR, you can have scientists that serve as consultants, or they can receive a subcontract and continue to work full-time at their home institution. These are limited to no more than 1/3 of the phase one award or 1/2 of the phase two award. And scientists may also serve as a PI by reducing their employment at their home institution to 49% or less for the duration of the grant. And we ask that you not use your own lab, that you find other lab facilities to carry out the work for the grant. And this is the university and government scientist involvement for STTR. So in STTR, the PI can be employed with a small business or the research institution, either one. The small business must perform 40% of the work on the project, and the research institution must perform a minimum of 30%. And then the other 30% can be outsourced to either the research institution or another subcontractor. So the research institution can do between 30 and 60%, or you can take 30% and use a subcontractor. I'd like to take a minute to talk about cooperative research and development agreements. These are agreements with a federal lab or a federal license for innovation. And these are they're called CRADAs, and CRADAs are the one thing that can give you a distinct advantage for a SBIR application. So if there are 2 applications in panel that are deemed to be of approximate equal merit, and one has a CRADA and the other does not, the CRADA will be the deciding factor. So these are excellent tools to have, and there are all kinds of benefits to working with the federal lab, including having laboratory space and equipment available to you at no cost. So it's really something to look into. They do take a little time to put together. So keep that in mind if you're planning to do that, and plan timing for that. They can take up to 6 months to pull together. Now, these next slides, I would like to talk a little bit about factors that improve your chances of award success. So we look at having, again, that high technical or scientific merit along with commercial potential. Those things should be around equal value. And we understand the nature of small business, and that small business is often the disruptor of industries or sectors. And so we welcome proposals that are high risk, high reward. We do not shy away from those. So if you feel that your proposal is high risk, high reward, please submit it. We will take it very seriously. Having good consultants and a CRADA agreement that we just talked about, it's important to demonstrate somehow that you have some business expertise available to you. And then strong letters of support from phase 3 partners. Phase 3 partners are like the end users or the consumers, or the people that have companies that have indicated they want to invest in you, or angel investors. Those letters of support are really quite important. And so making sure you have some of those along with your application is really advisable. And then in your proposal, if you can demonstrate a really clear understanding of how you're going to enter the market, and once you enter the market, how are you going to sustain yourself in the market, that would be very beneficial.